that's a good place to start off, because I think no matter where you're at in your training, our goal as instructors is to basically keep you constantly task saturated. And
thanks.
Right, and I told you that right when we started the instrument stuff. I said you're going to constantly feel overwhelmed, and that's exactly where I want you, right? Because if you don't grow without being uncomfortable, right? Whether you're working out or you're working on things emotionally, mentally, trying to learn anything new, it takes effort. It takes and that effort is going to cause some amount of pain, right? If I'm working out, I gotta go until I start to hurt, right? And I might even hurt a little bit tomorrow and the next day, right? But I'll get stronger as a result of that. If I want to learn something new, I got to sit down and study. I got to spend the time. I've got to focus. I can't just goof off and do whatever the heck I want to do, right? It takes an effort there. And flying is no different, right? We are constantly trying to get you to the point of being uncomfortable, not necessarily to the point of failure, right? And so what we talk about in that is that feeling that constant, like, right up to the top of what you can handle, that's exactly what we want, right? And not every moment of every flight is going to be like that, of course, because that would be unsustainable.
Yeah.
But just as you start to gain the skills that we need you to gain, we add more skills onto that, or we add new tasks onto that, and we keep that progression going, right? If all you ever do is 10 push-ups, pretty soon you're going to get real good at doing 10 push-ups. But how do you ever know if you can do more, right? Tomorrow you got to do 15. The day after that you got to do 20. And that's what this is. We're just keep adding tasks on, because we know you can handle 10 now. So try to handle 15. And if you can't, no big deal. We'll try again 15 tomorrow. And we'll try again 15 to the day after that. Eventually you'll be able to do 15. And once you can do 15, guess what we're going for? 20. Right? And it's just that progression, on and on and on, until you can take your check right? And the big key on that is a lot of times people will come and they'll get really discouraged right away, especially in private pilot training, because absolutely everything that we're doing is completely foreign unless you grew up in airplanes. This is never anything that you've ever done. It's probably a tiny bit terrifying. You have no idea what's coming. Just about everything there is an assault on your senses. The sound, the sensations, none of it is anything you've ever done before.
Steering with your feet.
Exactly.
What's with that?
Yeah, it's crazy, right? Everything is just, it's an upside down world. And then all of a sudden I'm being like, yeah, so you can go ahead and take off, jam the power in, let's go, right? And so from an instructor's standpoint, what I have to realize is that is absolutely the most you can handle, right? I'm not going to ask you on day one to do some steep turns or to knock out a few stalls or anything like that, right? That's crazy. Yeah. After a couple of flights, probably not even one or two, some of those things start to get dulled, right? Starting up the airplane isn't quite as scary. Taxiing starts to become a little bit more comfortable and something you don't worry about as much. And once those worries come down, we can add more tasks. And what we're getting at, you and I are getting at, is my cup analogy, right?
Yeah.
Where, on our day-to-day, if your ability to do anything is, the analogy is a glass of water, most of the day we're going to sit around with that glass a third full, right, of all the things that we just got to think about, paying the mortgage and the kids are doing this and whatever else. It's just, your low-level life kind of day-to-day stuff that you're still going to do all your other normal stuff. The second we get into an airplane, depending on how much time you've had and all that kind of stuff, but I will argue, no matter how experienced you are, that cup goes half full immediately. Immediately it goes to half full. And it has to, right? Because it's a very intensive process. Just to even get ready for a flight should be like that, right? And I can tell you a lot of times where I've been just completely wound around the axle just pre-flighting an airplane, right? Because the kids are running around and because this is going on and the weather's starting to suck and all this other kind of stuff. And I can feel myself being like, oh, here we go. We're building up. You know, I'm already feeling overwhelmed, and I haven't even started this airplane up just yet. So how can I manage that, or how can you manage that as a student? And part of it is just understanding where you're at in this, right? Is keeping track of where that cup is. Because halfway full, I still got quite a bit of cup left to fill up. That's okay. I'm not oversaturated, but I'm definitely, I can feel it, right? I'm on the treadmill, got a few miles an hour going, a little bit of wind, I'm breaking a sweat for sure, right? But I'm not to my maximum. I'm not going to fall off the back end of that treadmill just yet. As I start adding things to do, that starts to get filled up, right? What are some of the things that I add to do? Well, the weather's bad today. Oh, cup just got a little bit more full. Haven't flown in 6 months. Oh, cup just got a little bit more full. Flying with family and friends. Oh man, that's putting my cup just even a little bit more full. And we haven't even started the airplane just yet, right? And you can see where this starts to go. And so understanding what level you're at will give you an understanding of, are you a safe pilot today? Is this something that you want to do today? Because if you're feeling task saturated before you ever leave the ground, how the heck is flying an airplane going to make any sense to you today, right? It obviously can't. So our goal is, how do we moderate how much is in that cup? Because I desperately don't want it to spill over. That's when I start making mistakes, right? Once I'm task saturated and I can no longer handle anything else, what happens when ATC tells me do X, Y, and Z? Or what happens when the airplane, you know, something goes wrong with the airplane and I get a warning light, right? If I'm up to here, I don't have much left to deal with, right? And we always have to leave ourselves enough margin in that cup to be able to handle any eventualities. And so when I watch people take off, and you can see it in their eyes that they're just full to the brim, you kind of got to say to yourself, what are you leaving in reserve? Have you left anything? Because while you're sitting there doing your push-ups, right, and you think you're just going to have to do 20 today, you never know if somebody's going to come out and say, no, now today you got to do 25. Or if somebody else is going to come out and step on your back, right, and say, now do some push-ups. And you have to be ready for that, because that's what an emergency is somebody coming out and stepping on your back going, now do your push-ups. Because you don't get to stop. You're still flying. Yeah. Right? And that's the risk that we take every single time we fly is, hey, regardless of what happens here, if I'm choosing to fly, I'm also choosing to land, right? And I have to see through to that. So how do we keep that task saturation from happening? Well, sometimes you can't, right? And that's the honest truth of it. And when you're feeling like you can't bring it back down, probably not a great day to fly. Other times, you can say, you know what? What I need to do right now is I need to not worry about X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to focus on pre-flighting the airplane. Then I'm going to focus on checking the weather. And at any point, right, I can stop this chain. But if you try and look at it as this giant whole thing that I have to do, right? You gotta eat the whole pizza. Well, you got some hours to eat a whole pizza. Don't worry about it just yet, right? Start taking a bite. See how far you get. And if you can't make it all the way through, great. That's no problem, right? Today maybe not a good day to fly. There's lots of not good day to fly. Just because you signed up today doesn't mean that it has to happen, right? And that's one of the things that really, right, the get home-itis, the mission focus that we tend to get. Most of the safety boards that I've sat in on are just people being like, well, this was the only day I had to fly. Nope, there's 364 other days and a quarter. Go ahead and pick one of them, right? Just because you had an airplane today didn't mean you had to fly. And if you're not a pilot enough to make that decision, then you're not a pilot enough to fly. And that's just the bottom line. Whether it be weather or currency or complexity or whatever else. And almost always, in all those cases, it's because they're flying with people that were out of town or people that were, right? So now what's this about? Is this about flying or is it about your ego? And that's...
I didn't want to disappoint my friends.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I didn't want to look like an asshole.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't want to be the guy who couldn't go because the weather was bad. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Because that's what a competent pilot does. That's what a good pilot does. They make hard decisions. That was an easy decision you made. You took care of your ego in it. But you didn't take care of anything else. Nothing else. You didn't care about anybody else's safety, even your own. What you cared about was that you didn't feel like you couldn't do it. So rather than making a safe decision, you make the one that is safe for your ego.